Pallbearer Joseph Rowland. How are you? And welcome to Damnation Versus.
Hey, I'm doing pretty well.
Good, good. We were supposed to do this a couple of nights back, but I understand you've had some pretty horrific weather across there and Wi-Fi connections. You'll be back? Is everything safe and all good to go?
Yeah, it wasn't weather. It was just for some reason this week, because I live in New York City, the internet connection has been like really spotty, and I'm like choosing to blame it on the fact that like literally everyone is on their either on their Wi-Fi or on their phones right now, like scrutinizing the stock market. So
yes.
my
Is that something you've been tuned into at the moment? Basically the New York Stock Exchange losing its arse to a few folk in Reddit.
yeah, it's really insane. And normally I wouldn't even be paying attention to that much to stuff like this, but it's turned into like a global movement at this point, I think.
Yeah,
It's like the top news item.
it'll be good to see how it all pans out. Right, so let's dive right in. If I was to mention to you the fire alarm at Damnation Festival, would that mean anything to you?
Oh yeah, that's like one of the most infamous moments I think in all our touring. Just because maybe not even because of the alarm itself, but our sound engineer that was out touring with us became a meme like in and of himself because of that. Because so some people may not realize this, like before this, we were like weeks into this European tour, and our sound engineer Rob, he'd been like joking like all along that like at some point he was going to do sound like just wearing a Speedo and nothing else. And so before the set, I convinced him to do it at Damnation. I was like, this is like the last like really big show we're doing on this run. If you're going to do it any day, it's got to be today. We were all like really fired up in general. Like, I think sometimes when there's a set that's like kind of like in the afternoon or something, you have to take some sort of different measures to get yourself like really in the game,
Yes,
like either it's like slamming a few drinks or drinking energy drinks or something like that. So we're all like really keyed up on that. We were excited about the day in general because we knew that we would get to party and hang out with friends that we hadn't seen in a while, like after we got done playing. So everybody was just like at a real like frenetic moment, I guess. So we were playing the set during like the final moments of like the finale because we were finishing up.
Was it I looked at Wiki set list. Was it Foreigner?
It was Foreigner. Yeah, it was like during the like big like dramatic outro, the fire alarm went off. We had no idea what was going on from stage because all our amps were up so loud.
Yeah.
We couldn't hear the fire alarm. All we knew that was that the PA got cut. We could tell that like there was a little bit of drop in volume, but it was still like so much air coming from the amps that it just seemed like normal. And then the lights came up, and we were just like, oh, well, maybe we went over our time or something like that.
Yeah. So did your sound man end up outside in his pants?
Well,
when pants in the UK being boxer shorts or Speedos, did he end up outside in freezing cold in fucking English November?
I think he managed to grab something, but a bunch of people took pictures of him because the lights came up all of a sudden, and he's standing at the like sound console wearing like a tiny black Speedo, and it ended up everywhere on the internet, like the Pro Tools, Facebook, like Avid, like I think Toman, like the big like music retailer.
Brilliant.
They had it on their Facebook page, and they had like watermarked it with their logo, and Bob got really mad, and he like emailed them and told them that they had to take that down. But I mean, it like transcended as like hilarious and like kind of jarring. And
I would recommend to anyone who hasn't seen that picture to hunt it out. Probably Pallbearer at Damnation or sound engineer in pants will get you there to that. So it was. I spoke to Brett. I bumped into Brett briefly that day, and he'd said I never even realised. That the sound alarm, the fire alarm had gone. And it was no big deal one way or the other. Okay, everybody loved to just finish the last few notes of your set, but it's not as if it cut into the second song and then the whole set was ruined. Everybody enjoyed it. But it snowballed in Damnation fans' eyes as if Pallbearer played for 10 seconds and then had their set cut. So now it's a bit like Pallbearer are coming back, hopefully this year, and they better not, their set better not be ruined again by a fire. I'm like,
I don't think man. Idea that we were literally like only 30 seconds from being done with the set. Anyway, like it kind of like ended up becoming this whole other
thing. Yeah. So how is as things stand right now? We're chatting in January 2021. We've all had a terrible 2020. How are things standing with the band, with the plans for the summer? Obviously, you've got dates booked for Norway with Elder and Irist. We've got that package coming across to play Damnation. Have you got anything scheduled for the summer, or is that just cancelled at the minute until you can see where you get?
Yeah, we don't have anything set in stone right now. I think that like we're kind of biding our time, like waiting to see like what's going to happen with the vaccine. Maybe I think if we're really lucky, maybe the tail end of summer, there might be some stateside shows. But I think we're all just trying to be kind of like cautiously optimistic about the way things are right now, and
Yeah. I mean,
things are definitely looking up.
They are. I'm starting to get a wee bit. It's getting rosier in the UK day by day. Obviously, I'm up in Scotland, and we're starting to get to that point now where everyone in care homes and everyone aged over 85 has now had the first dose of the vaccine. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm also like, there is no. What's the point of not being optimistic? Just to sit here in January and say Damnation definitely won't happen and not bother even trying, because you gain nothing from that. And I take it that's how you felt as a band, right? Okay, we can aim for the end of the year, and if that gets knocked on again, it was Tom Taff, your agent, was last week's episode, and he was a bit like, well, we have a plan C. If it needs to go to plan C, that will happen, but why not aim for plan B? So was that the sort of decision as a band, look, let's just hope for the best?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really obvious now that people are like really, really hungry for live music to come back. I mean, just kind of seeing as the like prospects are starting to like look a little more promising, like it seems like just from our Norwegian dates that we have lined up, like the pre-sales have been really, really strong. Like I think people are just like ready for things to start to like push back into like what feels like normalcy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's easy to get bogged down and like feeling like stuff is never gonna like tip back the other way. But I think that it's important to like at least be like have some level of optimism about it.
I'm really happy to hear that about the Norway dates, because that's an issue for promoters at the moment, especially the promoters that have got summer festivals going into June, July, August, is you can't spend too much money to promote it, because it might, if that doesn't happen, that's another hit that you're taking. And secondly, people don't want to commit to it until it happens, so it's a bit of catch-22. Damnation's slightly luckier because we had such a good pre-sale for last year, and 90% of people just kept the tickets. So we kind of came into 2021 and are really good. We've got half the tickets are already gone, more than half now. So we've kind of like, there's no as if there's a bunch of folk rushing to buy tickets in January for November, but because we've done such a great pre-sale. So it's good to hear that in Norway at least that is the case, because what could happen is the vaccine rollout could be great, that we could end up having shows by October, November, but promoters have had to cancel tours because the pre-sales have been so terrible that they just wasn't worth the risk to take, you know. So I'm glad to hear that about Norway. So good. And that package with the Irist and Elder, what role does the Pallbearer play with that?
I mean, it's just something that like we didn't like talk to them directly about it, but we've known the Elder guys, at least from like running into them here and there. I have kind of like a funny story. from years and years ago when we were on our like first national tour of like crashing at their house, like back when Nick still lived in Boston,
Right.
and partying and like everybody being really obnoxious, like mostly us, actually only us. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a tour that has, we'd been kind of like discussing it with our management for a while, like it would be cool to do something with them, because they both them and ourselves have kind of like taken a little bit more of a trajectory into the progressive rock realm. Obviously they sound quite a bit different than we do, but I mean, I think that there is kind of like a kinship in terms of like the way that we view how we like to present heavy music. And
yeah, I mean, just from the context of Damnation, when you announced Pallbearer and you get that fan, when you announced Elder, it was the same fans that were very excited about Pallbearer who are now very excited about also seeing Elder. So yeah, because when I was talking to Tom, your agent, last week, and we'll talk about putting together packages, this is an example of one where you usually get, when we first discussed this package, it was a Pallbearer headline tour. It's exclusively, we're probably going to have two supports, one of them being Irist, and then the package changed, so you get Elder into it. Now, it's unlikely you're going to get promoters saying, okay, let's just automatically double the fee to allow these two bands to be on it. So was there discussions there about, right, guys, we might need to take a small hit in fees in different territories, but now we have Elder with us, we might sell at more venues or sell more merch, or what was the discussion about taking in another big band with you rather than just going out and playing with two more traditional supports?
I mean, we've done the co-headline thing before. It just makes sense. I mean, it helps like combine bigger fan bases instead of having a bigger band and then like two like,
openers
like more on the like
the
upswing or whatever. I don't know the best way to describe it, but I mean it. And also considering the fact that coming out of the doldrums that we're in right now, there is going to have to be a little bit of a different strategy and getting people through the door. I mean, every band out there is going to want to be touring in as soon as they can, because everybody has had to just like sit on their hands pretty much. So I mean, I think just like approaching it like that and being like, all right, look, in the past, it might have been great for us to go out and bring out two like younger bands or whatever.
Yeah.
This will probably, I think, in the long run, having a package that's like really hard to say no to is better than kind of betting on being able to get like good venues, whatever. I don't know. There's a lot of considerations to go into it, but we also we have a lot of trust in our management, and like Tom, for instance, too. Like we just started working with him last year, and I know that they have taken a lot of this, like a lot of the considerations around it. They have been doing the heavy lifting on that, and they just bring the idea to us, and we are like, yeah, that sounds like that works.
From a promoter's point of view, firstly, from a fan's point of view, I feel that it's excellent, because then what you get, because you're right, now Elder go out and tour, Pallbearer go out and tour, and in the space of a couple of weeks they could be going through your city. You might not have the time or resources to get to both those shows, and your ticket price never doubles. If it's £15 or £20 to see Pallbearer in Glasgow or Leeds or London, it doesn't go to 40 because Elder are on the bill. It'll maybe go to 25 or 22. You pay an extra few quid and you get another headline band with it. And I've been involved in those packages, and sometimes they can work really well. And from a promoter's point of view, it's also good, because you're right, it gets folk through the door, and especially in a time when who knows how people are going to feel. People might still be worried. I mean, we might do really well with the vaccine rollout across the world, and tours might happen, but people might still be very worried about getting out to shows and being in large groups again. So it's definitely, every selling point will help for that.
I think just if there, whatever we can do, I mean, within reason, and like taking into consideration people's safety,
yes,
like whatever we can do to make it as much value for them as we can, where it's like, damn, I can't afford to miss these bands together, like other than in a festival setting like at Damnation, they may never get to see us play the same gig with them, you know. So it's kind of the thing where it's like the FOMO element,
no,
you know.
of course, and
You know, it's a legendary
it's
one or whatever.
such a great package as well. I mean, you've got Irist as well, seem to be one of those bands that are really making a lot of noise without. I mean, they've got an album out, and that's pretty much it at the minute. So that'll be great. That'll be great. So Tom, since we've touched on him and he was there here last week, so a lot of folk will now know Tommy's episode was fantastic. He seems like a great guy. So you got involved, or Pallbearer got involved with him last year. Tell me about how that came about.
He approached us, but also like our management company also books Daughters and Irist. So it's kind of like in the fam. We had wanted to change booking agents from the one that we had been working with previously, just because we felt like we maybe like weren't just quite the right fit, you know. Like there were some things we had great experiences, but there were some times that we felt like maybe he didn't quite understand what we were going for. I don't want to like say anything that negative about it. It was just like we reached a point where we felt like we wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction on that. So we kind of were just like, all right, we're gonna like amicably go a different direction on this. And then a little while later, like Tom approached us and we got on some calls with him and kind of talked about like what we wanted to do and how we wanted to like grow over in the European territories versus like, for us, we've always had a like very, very strong presence in the US, and Europe and the UK has always seemed like a little harder for us to chip into, which is weird because like I feel like our music is the kind of music that I feel like would speak to the European audience because it's like really dramatic and melodic. But so like, what do I know? So
well listen, I feel like I mean, we booked you with that back 2016, 2017, and by that point, Pallbearer was a good catch for a festival the size of Damnation. With the listeners, when I was talking to Tom last week, and he said about for a booking agent for like himself, he deals with UK and Europe, but booking agents for this side of the world tend not to deal at all with North America, and that was a part of the world that he never really had much insight into. So tell us a bit about what is the differences. I've only ever had one American guest on before, Dennis from Ghostbath, and his opinion of it was in America, bands, the Ghostbath size are treated quite unprofessionally and treated like karaoke singers when they show up at some venues, and it's really ropey. And then you come to the UK and it's sort of, you step up a bit, and then you go to Europe, you step up a bit, and the bands that I've spoken to who have been to Japan, well, you arrive there like royalty. So what's your take on it all, and what's different in the US versus Europe and the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, the touring experience in Europe and the UK is way different. Like you do get treated a lot more nicely, I would say, more professionally overseas. And I don't know. I think that like the arts in general seem to be valued a little bit more, not in America. But for whatever reason, that aside, like the venue experience, like dealing with the industry side of stuff in the US, like our fan base has always been like really, really strong in the US. So that's kind of been like the thing for us is like, it's been a little more like grassroots, like clandestine, I guess, like where the venues, sometimes they're shitholes and like there's no green room, or you only get like a crappy like 12-pack of beer or something. But the fan presence and the ability to like interact with the fans at those shows completely makes up for it, and we've like built a really strong following here from that. Whereas like it's almost like the opposite in Europe, where we feel like we're still trying to like get people kind of like on the wagon, so to speak. You know, we're treated very like professionally at the clubs, but we're still kind of trying to like connect with fans a little more.
Is that strange as well? Because so if you're on a standard Pallbearer headline tour of America, what sort of capacities are Pallbearer playing to in your own headline shows in America?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the market, but I mean, like if we play like a big market like New York or San Francisco or LA or something, I mean, it's like 1,000 cap rooms.
Really?
Uh,
Yeah.
and then like, if we play somewhere smaller, it could be anywhere from like 100 to 300 or something like that. But we've had like, depending on where it is, we have like places where we have like a really massive fan base. Like Chicago is like one of the strongest places for us too. Like we always have like a really huge show whenever we play there. So yeah, there's just kind of like strongholds of at least it that seems like so far away now. Like in
No, if you can remember
oh my
how
god,
it felt.
dude, after last year. I mean, the other thing too is in 2019 we uh only played like 9 shows that year because we spent most of the year working on Forgotten Days.
Yeah.
And one of the shows that we did was actually, I think it was like the first like official show where we just did Sorrow and Extinction in its entirety since like years and years back when that was like the only material that we had. It's like our first time in the like modern Pallbearer era to do that, and we played in Philly, and there were like the show was sold out, and there were like 1,200 people there or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
we've been planning on like because next year is going to be the 10th anniversary where we're like, all right, we're going to do like a limited like Sorrow and Extinction tour, and it's going to like it's
yeah, I
going to
mean,
be great. Hopefully we'll still be able to do that to some degree, but yeah, I mean, we had all these plans in place of like doing that in the US and in Europe, and then it was like we were going to put out the new record and then do that and then have more material lined up, and all of that is just
right the bin.
that point in time seems like ancient history now, and I can barely remember what it's like to play a show. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I feel
mean,
like once we get back on the horse, it'll be fine.
yeah, I mean that's the idea of playing shows in 1,200 cap that you're doing yourself and selling them out. I mean to put that in context, I mean there was venues that Behemoth and At the Gates were playing that were like 1,200 to 1,400 cap in the UK. So I mean that's impressive figures to then come across to Europe. I totally understand what you mean about coming across. Is that not strange as well that you come across here and play to 300 fans and you've got the full rider in the hotel rooms, and then you're playing 1,200 fans in Chicago and getting 6 beers?
I don't think you're like coming from being a band in Arkansas, like in Little Rock, which has a tiny metal scene. Like I don't think any of us ever like built up any expectations of like that we were only going to be playing to like huge crowds or anything. Like it feels great playing to like 100 people too. Those people are like just as excited to see you as 1,000 people. Like there's like no reason to like look down on there being a smaller show too. I mean,
sometimes the smaller shows are the best ones, aren't they? What's the talking about cable the shows that you've played then? So give me an example of some of the best shows that you've done. I mean, you've albeit in America came across. You've played all the biggest festivals. Give me an example of some of the best shows that Pallbearer have done.
Oh man, trying to think. Like when we played at Bloodstock.
It's always Bloodstock. It's always.
People were so like fired up though. I mean, it was like that was one of the bigger shows that we had done in like the recent past. I think it was like the biggest festival on that tour at least. And I mean, it was like the tent that we were in was completely packed out. Yeah, another one years ago was at Hellfest. There was a big debacle where we got separated in Paris and almost like didn't all make it to the festival in time to play. Like 2 of us got there with plenty of time, and the other 2 of us didn't get there until like 30 minutes before our set. So it was like pure adrenaline. Yeah. And that was awesome. But I mean, there's also been, I don't know, I would have to really like sit and think about it, but there are just times when it like, there's like a really like special feeling during the set, no matter if it's like a huge festival or if you're just like really like locked in together.
Hellfest is that is not a show that you want to miss. Is to play Hellfest. The I mean, anyone who listens to this podcast will know they're sick fed up of me banging on about Hellfest. Absolutely love it. But is there equivalent events in the States that you would see, like a Wacken, a Hellfest, or Grass Pop?
But I feel like the open air festival thing has only been like a recent thing for the U.S. At least like metal oriented or like heavy music oriented. We've done a few things. Like we've played a festival that was, I think that they retired it or like put it on hiatus for a while, but it was in Austin, Texas, called Fun Fest. That was pretty big, and that was one of those things that I remember. Like it was like we had to play at like 1 p.m. or something. Judas Priest was going to be on later, and we were all like, how are we going to get in the zone to play like this early? So I remember like I almost had a panic attack because I like drank too much coffee and then tried to follow it up with like drinking like whiskey shots and whatnot. But yeah, I think that the festival thing in general in the U.S., like metal wasn't able to participate in that until like maybe the last like 4 years in the same capacity that like some of the bigger like indie rock festivals or like EDM festivals or whatever have been happening for a long time. But metal and rock, like hard rock and stuff, have only recently kind of like gotten on the train of having the like Euro style like big outdoor fests.
Yeah, is it Riot Fest in Chicago that I see the posters for? They seem to bring back these like the original lineup of the Misfits. And have you played Riot Fest?
Yeah, we haven't done that one.
Oh. and what shows then? Have you been places? I mean, obviously every band when they first start out, it's 2 people and a dog in a place with no PA and fucking the promoter doesn't want to pay you. But I mean, once you were established as a band, you showed up some places and were like, this is hell on earth.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few places that we've showed up that we were kind of like, are we sure this isn't just like a condemned building? Or like it seemed like that the venue was like made out of like sheet metal or something. Like it was just like almost like a shack. But I think in general, like we've gotten to see like some of the like little more upscale venues that are out there over the past few years. There's also been some like really pleasant surprises where we'll be going to a city that we haven't played before that's like in a smaller market, and then they have a really badass venue. So like there's one that like Birmingham, Alabama has this incredible venue called Saturn that it's got it's a big room with a great PA, nice stage, and then upstairs there's a huge loft, like Euro style thing, for the band. There's like bunk beds there, like your own like private thing that has like a sliding door, so if you want to like go to sleep and not have anybody bother you, like it's just very deluxe. Not something that you really see that often in the US. Like usually, like I feel like venues just try to get by with the bare minimum, but this was actually like made by somebody who used to be a touring musician. It was like, I've seen like how good it can be. I want to like be able to like have something like that for musicians in the US and make what is like kind of like a smaller city like more of a destination for some of these bands too. Like if you have a reputation of having something really cool that people like want to play at because of like the experience, you have like a great experience somewhere, you want to go back,
Yeah, and this podcast, I feel like I've been guilty of that. Maybe just thinking that bands are on tour and everything's just copy and pasted one event or one venue into the next, and then having the chance to come on and talk to artists, tour managers, band managers, labels, and seeing the difference it actually makes. Small things actually make to a touring band, and what's remembered and what's actually talked about behind the scenes is kind of opened my eyes a little bit to, right, okay, well, how do we make Damnation more like that and make sure that people get that? Because that's exactly what you want. I was blinded by the whole sort of bands will just come in, play this gig, it'll just be like it's just another day on the tour. And then when you speak to people, that's not the case at all. You can make that day in the tour very special, or you can make it hellish.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to elevate it from being bad to good. And then it, like, beyond that, it can be like one of the most memorable experiences in your career, you know, like it does. I think that like the little attention to details on the side of the promoters and the venue, it makes a huge difference, because like otherwise your experience in the band every day is like just almost like deja vu. You're like going through, like, you're doing the same routine every day, and as long as things like kind of stay at a status quo, you know, it's like, all right, whatever, you know. But then like little stuff that's bad sticks out, and if it's really bad, it really stands out to where you're like, all right, never again.
Yeah.
But then the good stuff goes a long way too. And if it's really good, if it's really, really good, then you like never forget about it. So
when you show up in November and there's the couches with the nice throws and the bottles of champagne in the corner, right, at Damnation, you can let me know if we've nailed it or not. So you were saying earlier about the fact that you already feel that everything you've done with like Forgotten Days, and that it already feels like it's in the distance now. Most people that aren't musicians, the same as myself, just think that a record comes out and the band recorded it the day before, but obviously that's not the case. So it came out the tail end of last year. You never got to do anything with it. It would have taken you a year before to actually write it. So we're maybe looking at an album that by the time even the thought process starts a couple of years old. How, by the time you get to play this, well, let's start with how frustrating has it been to see the critical acclaim and how much everyone enjoyed it, but not being able to get the payoff of playing it?
There's such a like bizarre disconnect, man. I like it feels like so long ago that we were in the headspace of writing that, because we recorded it almost a year before it was released. Like we recorded it in November of 2019, and then it didn't come out until the end of October of last year. So I mean, all of that time going by without the ability to like further connect with the material. Like I think for us, that's like one of the biggest things about Pallbearer is like we write the songs, we record the songs, but then we like develop like a further like relationship with the music, and it evolves from there. And being kind of robbed of the opportunity for that is really bizarre, because that's like been part of our life cycle as a band the whole time, is like letting the music kind of like grow with us, you know, and not being able to do that at all has like, I don't know, it's been like a sort of like a disorienting and like almost like alienating feeling, like seeing people like talk about the music, but they're only getting to experience like one rendition of it. That to me, like, yeah, it exists as like a time capsule that I'm very proud of. But I think that like all of those songs will like go on to be something like much more, like once they're in rotation and we're playing them live, and they continue to develop in like really like subtle or unsubtle ways. So yeah, I've felt like pretty like sad about like having that disconnect, but I know that it, you know, it'll like come back sooner or later. So
yeah, has it at least been some comfort that it came out and it did? It was in the top albums of the year awards, and it had such a good reception. In an odd way, does that make it even more difficult to swallow, because you know that everyone enjoyed the music so much, yet here you are still stuck in your New York house and you can't get out and play it?
Yeah, yeah, it's awful. And I think even like I feel like whether people loved it or were critical of it, I think like every record we've done, some of the critics of the music have ended up like coming back later and being like, I didn't understand it until I saw it live. I heard the record, it didn't do anything for me, but then I saw it and I was like, now I get it. And that's another thing where it's just like, well, whatever, we made the record that we want to make, but I know that there are people that like that may like not be into it, that like I think will really love the record, and it'll like be special to them later. And like just the thought of that kind of like just being in limbo too is frustrating. I can't wait to get out and play this stuff. We wrote Forgotten Days with a lot of like intention of it being like our most like live album. Pretty much, we wanted it to be like a record that would be showcased well in the live setting versus like other things that we've done that like honestly, like some of the material on Heartless was like tremendously hard for us to like figure out how to acclimate it into the live setting. It took us a long time to get to a point where we felt like we were like really in the groove of performing it at its like best capacity. But I think with Forgotten Days, like from the get-go, we sort of like took the lesson that we learned from Heartless and tried to apply that where we were like, all right, we want to make a record that we think can shine like even brighter live than the studio album itself. Maybe, I don't know. We won't know until
get out there. Exactly. Have you managed to do anything to scratch the itch? Has there been any live? You guys on different parts of the country, I understand. There's been no live stream. There's been nothing for you.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're separated by quite a bit of distance. So once the vaccine has been distributed a little bit more and like it's a little like safer to travel and not have to worry about convening and then like having to quarantine for 2 weeks, like the expense surrounding even getting together to rehearse would be astronomical, and just the amount of time devoted to not even doing anything other than like waiting to be able to get together to do something. We had been talking last year about doing a live stream, but it was like right before things like took a turn for the worse with the virus, and we decided to like shelve that for the time being. We may still end up doing something. I don't know. But it's all just kind of contingent on whether or not like the like logistics of it end up making sense. But.
Yeah, I mean this is the optimistic metal podcast. We do believe that we're going to see live music again, and this isn't the end of the world. But is there any prospect if 2021 also falls off the calendar that there might be a ridiculous situation that Pallbearer record more new music because there's been such a lengthy delay since? I mean, at some point you need to fill your day, don't you? You need to do something. So is there a prospect to make you see new music if 2021 also ends up in the bin?
Well, we have a lot of material lined up. I don't really know the plans on like when it might get recorded. That's also still like totally in limbo. We're supposed to be having some calls with our management pretty soon to like maybe talk about that. But I mean, I think other than the tour, like playing Damnation later in the year, like that's like the only thing that is really like official right now. Everything else we're kind of just waiting until, like interstate travel is like less of a risk.
Yes. See, in the situation with Pallbearer at the moment, is it full time? Have you guys got to the stage that it's full time in your life, so you still get jobs on the side, or where are you in that?
It's been full time for quite a while.
I mean, good. Yeah. That's we're selling out 1,200 capacity venues in the States. That probably makes sense. But for folk in the UK, when you're seeing bands that are playing the kind of shows you've done previously, that's a bit of good news, actually, because I've asked that question of a couple of bands that have been on, and the answer's been no, we're not. We still have other jobs too. So that's. I mean,
that might be to our own chagrin. It's not like any of us are really like living a lavish lifestyle, but yeah, I mean, I, for instance, like I'll do production work here and there. Before Pallbearer became a full-time thing, I used to work in television. So periodically I'll find out about a gig working as a grip on something, or like just I'll do like a just a one-time gig on different things to make a little extra money here and there. I mean, none of us have a full-time job outside of Pallbearer. I think everybody's got their own hustle.
Well, good. That's a positive answer as well. The quicker that can come back, the better. When the last couple of episodes that I've done of this, I had Robin from the Ocean on, and his label Pelagic Records, and he mentioned a few bands, and then I had Tom on last week, and he was talking about Loathe and Higher Power. And some of the feedback I got from listeners was that was one of the favourite bits about it, is like discovering the bands that I was talking to about with guests, which I never expected. But one guy came on and said that he discovered Anil Nathrak and Amin Ra through the podcast. I'm like, he owes me money. I've changed that guy's life. So let's round off with that. Let's get some of the bands that you feel that people should be giving their attention to.
Oh man, I was about to say, like, I think honestly, like, playing festivals is like one of the main ways that I find out about bands that I've never heard of before. So I've been like deep in the hole of like not finding out about anything new for the last couple of years. But I know one metal band that I think is really awesome that is not, as far as I know, like not that well known. They're called Vampire.
Right.
They're from Sweden.
Okay.
We played with them when we were on tour with Paradise Lost a few years ago, and I was completely blown away. They're like the best, like extreme metal band that I've seen in a long time. I think it was like kind of like it owed a lot to like Venom and Celtic Frost and stuff, but it was like fast and ripping. Like it was just nothing but badass riffs like the entire time. They were so tight. It's unusual that I end up seeing a band that I've never heard of, and I'm just like unable to like, I can't, like, I'm just like so glued to it that I can't look away. It was one of the few times in the recent past where I was just like riveted by it.
It's great when that happens though, when you get, I mean, I've noticed with the lineup that we have for this coming Damnation, there's a few folk that have made that point and they're just looking forward to coming. I mean, people know who Pallbearer are now and know who Elder and Pink Destroyer and Wolves in the Throne Room, but some of the bands loading the bill are like looking forward to just come out and check them out and getting blown away and finding your new favourite band. Anyone else? They don't have to be particularly small, as I say. I mean, I managed to turn somebody onto Amin Ra that I thought everybody in the world did listen to their entire back catalogue. Is there anyone else you'd like to give a shout out before we round this off?
There's another band from Little Rock called Sumoken. It's like Sumoken.
Okay.
Or M, sorry. Last, not N. And they also play, they're kind of honestly like almost like a hybrid of the like doomier end of like what we do and like Elder, like with the more like kind of airy prog rock, and it has a lot of like guitar harmonies, and the singing is like very very melodic. There's some like harsher vocals too, but the singer Jacob it has a like really spectacular voice though. I would definitely recommend checking out Sumoken and Vampire. That's the two bands that are taking the hit for this week's Damnation Versus. Listen, I really appreciate your time. I hope we can share a pint in November at Damnation and you'll share your champagne that I'm buying for you. I'll see you then. All right, big chap.